Welcome to the Emily the Mystic Show. You're about to walk through a portal that leads to all things mystical, magical, spiritual, and supernatural. I'm your host, Emily. I'm a spiritual mentor, an Akashic Records practitioner and teacher, an intuition development coach, and a galactic channeler. If you're an old soul on a self-discovery and healing journey, you are in the right place. We'll be diving in deep to some of my favorite mystical topics, including manifestation, past lives, the spirit world, energy, and so much more. Get ready to embrace your inner mystic and live your most authentic life possible. The portal is now open. Hello, my dear listener. Oh my goodness, we are in for a treat today because I have the amazing Helena of Helena Woods joining us to talk to us about astrocartography. This is one of my just fascinations that I have. I have just loved learning so much from Helena, her podcast. You probably have seen her out there on the social media world. So I can't wait to introduce you to her today. So welcome, Helena. She is a world-traveling astrocartographer, author, and relocation astrology expert. Through her highly engaging online presence, online digital courses, popular published book, Slow Living, and her #1 ranked podcast, Cosmic Compass, she creates from her heart to inspire others to create magical lives in places they love. After having lived across the world while working with 2,000 clients, doing locational astrology counseling, Helena is on a mission to educate, empower, and inspire others to connect with the energies of place using traditional astrology techniques. Places have stories, and using astrocartography, we have the power to unlock the potential of our own natal promise through relocation and travel. Helena's contagious enthusiasm and passionate heart reminds her growing combined audience of 120,000 kindred spirits to come back home to their cosmic compass. Welcome, Helena, to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I'm so excited to talk about this incredible tool that is just so useful and helpful and just helps us give more clarity to our lives and understanding our stories in the world.
Yes. And I know you're a bit of a world traveler. So where are you joining us from today?
Yeah, Versailles, France. I'm here in Versailles, just outside of Paris.
Amazing. And so the audience can get to know you better. I would love if you could share your astrology, sun, moon, and rising.
Yeah, I have a Taurus sun, Leo moon, Scorpio rising. But a lot of people think that I'm a Sag rising, and it's because I have Jupiter on my ascendant. So if you're
that makes so much sense.
Like, she doesn't see like a Scorpio rising, it's because Jupiter's on my ascendant. So you're getting a lot of the Jupiter energy.
I love that. And as a Taurus rising myself, I love the Taurus energy. So thank you for bringing that to the show today.
Yeah.
And do you know your human design type?
Yeah, I'm a manifesting generator 3/5.
Love that. Wow.
What are you?
I am also a Manny Gen 1/3.
Ooh, very nice. Oh, so you got that 3 in your profile too.
Yes.
I one of my friends who's a human design expert, 3s, we're here to kind of throw all the paint on the canvas and see what sticks and play and experiment from what we learn through trial and error,
My whole life is about experimentation and throwing things against the wall to see what sticks. So It's so true, especially as an entrepreneur. So I love that. And I would love for us to really get into who you are. Could you share with us a little bit about your story and maybe some of the pivotal moments that got you to where you are now?
Yeah, I have always loved astrology. My mom, when I was born, she had her astrologer make a packet of all of my, birth chart. What does it mean when this is in this house? The aspects being made to this. So I grew up always having this packet and always being fascinated by astrology, but I didn't really get into it until like my senior year of high school. I started doing a lot more research on it, like sun signs, moon signs, the basics. When I was in college, I moved to New York to be an actress because basically my whole life I wanted to be on stage in the theater, musical theater. And I went out to college in New York. And that year, I basically skipped all my classes and I would go audition for shows and I worked at an off-Broadway theater. And so And also, the other thing I always did was I would go to Barnes and Noble across the street from my college, and I would sit in the astrology section and just read all the books. And I was so broke, I couldn't afford to get any books at Barnes and Noble, but I would sit on the floor and I would go through all the books. And like, if I had a crush on someone, I would look up their sun. What does it mean if the synastries with this, And so that was like those little clues. And often those little clues, those little hints, the things that we do when we're bored, the things that we look up, we Google search, we read at the library, those are the things that are pointing us home to our compass, to ourselves. And I then moved to France years later in 2018. So this was like 6 or 7 years later. I moved to France and I felt home for the first time in my life. And I had never felt that feeling of home because I'd always traveled. I had loved going abroad. I loved moving to different places, but I never felt that feeling of home before. And moved to France. My husband got a job here. And as I was getting settled living here, I heard a podcast. And on this podcast, this girl started talking about, chakra points in the world and where there are points in the world where there's these chakra centers, these vortex centers. And it just got me thinking about like how certain locations in the world have energies and how we feel differently in different parts of the world. And from there, I found astrocartography just through Google search from that podcast. And so I've been on a journey with it since 2018. And then in 2021, I was in the Akashic Records. I opened up my records. I've been reading them since 2018 for myself. And I got a message, you need to talk about this online. Because I'd never really talked about it. Like I'd mentioned it here or there in a blog post or a YouTube video, but I never made like a dedicated video talking about the astrology of place, the astrology of location, how certain parts of the world feel differently and have certain stories for you depending on your birth chart. I didn't like ever really talk about it publicly, like in depth. And I was in the Akashic Records. I was told, or it was like a message. It was just a feeling. It was a gut knowing. You need to speak on this online on YouTube and write about it. So I got up from the records that morning. I posted a blog post. I started making a few YouTube videos on it. And the business just caught like wildfire. Like it just took off. And I've been doing it ever since. Ever since end of 21, I've been doing this full time. I've made a whole business allowing me to travel the world and do this work. And it's just been absolutely incredible. But it's amazing how there were so many clues along the way. And if I had like looked at them more in depth, I wonder if I would have started way sooner. But I had to kind of be on this journey of like living in different places to really experience all of this before teaching on it.
Oh my gosh. And I can so relate to so many things you shared, the moments in Barnes and Noble, looking at the spiritual books and just pouring into as much information as you can possibly receive. That was so me as a kid. And it's so interesting how those little breadcrumbs, exactly like what you shared, are there. But I know, with astrology, like it's all about divine timing, right? So we always come into things exactly at the right divine time. And two, I love what you shared about the records because listener knows that's the records is what I teach. That's what I'm all about and how much of a profound difference they can make in your life with helping you reconnect with your purpose. So I love that you shared that.
Completely. Anytime I've ever been lost or confused, or I was at a point of like a pivot in life and I didn't know where to go next, I've always consulted the records and I've always received clarity from them. So many things I've done over the years. It's such a helpful tool to just have whenever you're seeking information from within. It's always there and you can open them up at any time. It's magical.
Amazing. And has traveling always been a part of your life? Has that always been a big part of your story? I would love
Ever since my progressed sun entered Gemini, when that started. So when my progressed sun entered Gemini, I just started becoming obsessed with I would take buses to like Philadelphia or DC, or I would get $1 megabus rides, and I remember I used to have this little map book, and I used to like with my pencils, I used to sketch out like the places that I was going to. And I've always been a journaler, like an active journaler. And so I would always journal like, here's what's going on as I'm going this area. And this is what's happening as I'm traveling to this area. And so it's even that little hobby of like documentation of how I feel as I'm on the bus or on a train or on a road trip. And yeah, so I've always loved travel. I used to take Amtrak trains cross country across the US multiple times and always loved that, sleeping in a little economy seat for 4 days. I couldn't do it now, but I loved doing it then. And my style of travel has definitely changed as I've now I'm in my 30s. But yeah, always loved travel. And it's so cool to find this unique niche in astrology with using that.
Oh, 100%. So let's get into astrocartography. What is that? Can you explain what that means to the listener?
Yeah. Astrocartography is the astrology of place, and it's primarily based off of relocated charts. So you have a birth chart, and for what you could do is you could move your relocated chart, or you can move your birth chart to a different part of the world and see what is the story happening in different parts of the world. And so essentially in the 1970s, this astrologer named Jim Lewis created this mapping software that basically took all of the relocated charts, or anytime a planet, like your sun, your moon, your Venus, anytime you have a planet that was on an angle or it was really prominent in a certain part of the world, he created this map so you can see these lines that go on your map that show you where this prominent planetary energy is in the world. And so this guy like created this genius software where you're able to take all this information from relocated charts, because it's kind of complicated looking at relocated charts, but then putting it on a map so it's simplified so you can see what is happening where. And so you might have the moon rising, or the moon is on the ascendant in one part of the world, or Venus is setting, Venus is on the descendant at one part in the world. And so it's as if you were born, if you took your first breath in life at the same exact moment as you were born, but you were born in Tokyo or you were born in Paris. This is what the chart says. This is what the relocated birth chart says of like, what is the story if you lived here? And so as you travel, or you can do this, at home, you don't even have to travel. You can use remote activation, which we can get into. But basically the idea is places have stories in the world, and places have unique energies that are unique to your birth chart. And so you can go to these places to kind of activate these natal promise themes that you have already in your chart, and you can make them more prominent in your life. And oftentimes a lot of people, they'll feel stuck in their lives. They'll feel like something is just not working. And there's nothing going on in the chart. There's nothing going on in the transits. It's where they're living. And so I specialize uniquely in helping people move and also helping people travel to get to places where the energy is just more supportive for them.
I love that. Couple questions going off of that. I know you talk about the natal promise in the chart. What does that mean? Can you explain to us what that is?
Yeah. The natal promise is a traditional astrological basic way of saying that whatever is in your birth chart is going to happen. It's a matter of when. So if you have Venus in the 11th house of friendship, there is a story with that theme of friendship that will be activated at some point in your life. Or let's say you have a really important planet in your 5th house of children, or your 3rd house of writing or cousins, or your 4th house of parents, or your 7th house of spouse, right? It's essentially saying that there is a story that's very unique and specific that will be unlocked for you. And it's just a matter of when it's activated, or when there's a transit or a progression that's opening up that story that is bound to happen. And that's kind of a traditional Hellenistic way of seeing astrology, which is more predictive. It's less evolutionary. So it's less, like karma, and like, it's I wouldn't say it's less spiritual because it's super spiritual, but it's just more predictive in technique.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to kind of the philosophy behind how
the planets are affecting us? Because I see everything in terms of energy. So my interpretation would be if I'm going to a specific line on my birth chart, or sorry, on my astrocartography chart, that energy behind that planetary line would impact me in such a way. Is that how
Yes,
you see it? Does that make sense? Or is there a different way that you
exactly.
would explain it?
Yeah, I like to think of it as the clock on the wall idea, that the clock isn't making it 3 p.m., but it's just showing that it is 3 p.m. So when you pull up your astrocartography map, it's not showing you that, this planet is causing you to feel a certain way if you're here, but rather this place has this energy for you. And if you want to go there, you can. I love astrocartography because it blends a little bit more free will involved. You have a choice in where you live, you have a choice in where you go. And I just think that's so mystical and magical.
Oh, 100%. So when it comes to, let's talk about first more positive places to
Yeah.
visit, travel, or move to. What are your recommendations based on the clients you've worked with in your own life?
Yeah. It always depends first on the natal chart. So not everyone's going to have a great Venus, not everyone has a great Jupiter, not everyone's going to have a great sun. It all depends on the aspects that are happening to those planets in the person's unique chart. However, generally speaking, people love Venus lines. Venus is the planet of pleasure, enjoyment, beauty, appreciation, romance. And so Venus lines can often bring that sense of appreciation and good vibes, and people usually will feel it. And then Jupiter lines are just very enthusiastic. There's a sense of cosmic, curiosity or open-mindedness or, that sense of joy and enthusiasm that comes from Jupiter lines. It's really optimistic and expansive for people. And often people also like sun lines. Sun lines are just great for confidence, high self-esteem. There's a sense of shining on sun lines and sun ascent. There's certain lines that are better than others, but those three planetary lines are usually the best ones that people love.
Love that. And before I forget, can you briefly walk us through how we could pull up our chart in a simple
Yeah,
way?
definitely. You can go to astro.com, AstroDNs, it's called astro.com. If you go to the Astro Click travel feature, so once you create a free account, you'll just click on your profile, set up your birth time, make sure your birth time is accurate. You want to make sure it's within 15 minutes. If it's more than 15 minutes off, the map will not be accurate just because the astrocartography map is so based on angles, the 4 angles in astrology, and they move 1 degree every 4 minutes. So they can shift a lot depending on what the time of birth is. So once you create your free profile, you just go to the AstroClick travel feature, and then you can pull up your map for free, and you'll see those beautiful colored lines crisscrossing on your map. And then what you can also do if you want to go a little bit deeper is you can tap around your map, like just use your mouse and tap around on the map for certain areas. And you'll want to click on the top right-hand corner. It'll say show details. When you click that little button, it'll show you the parens, which are latitude lines. And we don't have to go too in depth with that because I know it can kind of overwhelm people when they're first learning this. But that just shows the energy that's happening at a latitude. So like, for instance, the northern part of California will be so different from the southern part of California. So even if you've got like a beautiful Venus line going right directly through the state of California, you're still going to have latitude lines that show the stories and energies at different cities. Like San Luis Obispo will feel very different from San Diego, which will feel very different from Redding. So those parens or those latitude crossings, you can also click around and read them on the sidebar on astro.com for free.
Love that. So helpful. And so, getting back to what I was asking you about positive places, of course, there are going to be places that may be perceived as more challenging or at least maybe more growth oriented. I'm all about, reframing our perception of how we look at the positive versus the negative. So, when it
Yeah.
comes to maybe a place we've traveled to where we had a crazy experience or it was more challenging or there was a lot going on, like what would we look for in terms of the astrocartography?
Yeah, generally the most challenging astrocartography lines are the two malefic planets, which are Mars and Saturn. It depends on the natal chart. For instance, I live very close to my Saturn line. It's right on my sense of self, and I love it. I love my Saturn line, but I have a good Saturn in my chart, so it really depends on the chart. But Mars and Saturn traditionally are more challenging for people. Also, Pluto lines can be a doozy for some of those, because Pluto represents drama, metaphorical death and rebirth, the intensification of things, transformation. So there is just a lot of growth. And, there are definitely people who live on Pluto lines that are super successful. Like, I don't know if you know To Be Magnetic at all.
Yes.
Like Lacey Phillips, she lives on our Pluto line, and she's like the queen of subconscious transformation work, right? And like neural reprogramming. That's so Pluto. So you definitely doesn't need to be a deal breaker, but typically Pluto lines can be more intense for people. It's more about kind of going into the underworld, going into the depths of the subconscious, your inner worlds, and finding truth there, and then coming out of that and sharing that with others or exposing truth. Also, Chiron lines can be very sensitive. Chiron is the wounded healer in astrology. So there is a sense of healing, teaching, but also that sense of discomfort or a sense of, feeling a little sensitive or a little triggered or a little wounded by things that need healing within yourself that will be brought to light on Chiron lines.
I love that. And I just have to share a quick personal example that's kind of funny and like really illustrates this. So, my boyfriend and I, we've been together for almost 9 years now. And we went on a trip together to Colorado, specifically to Denver. And when we were on this trip, this was a few years ago, I was just loving life. I felt so good. I was just really enjoying the flow and being connected to the mountains. And he went through a series of, I'll say, more internally challenging experiences, just crazy things like his flight getting delayed because we had different travel plans and all sorts of things. So now that I know about astrocartography, I had to look it up. And sure enough, I was right on my Venus line and he was right on his Pluto line in Denver.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, those Pluto lines, you really feel like you come back a different person. Every time I've gone to a Pluto line, I feel like I've been transformed or changed, maybe gotten through some challenges on that trip, but I've come home different. And so you can always expect some sort of change or transformation when you go to a Pluto line for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely feel like that trip really both impacted both of us in such a positive way. So
Wow,
I love that.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. And it's amazing. It's like you have this little treasure map of your world.
Mhm.
And you can use that too. Like even if you don't want to travel there or move or relocate there, you can use those lines to show you like where are the best places to target your energy. Like let's say you've got amazing relationship lines in the Midwest and you find that all of your clients are based there. Like you find that all your clients come from your Mercury line, or you get a lot of publicity and attention from maybe a podcast, or maybe you start to run a Facebook ad or something for your business in a certain part of the world where you have a lot of publicity on that line. That's using remote activation, which is essentially connecting with stories around the world, but not needing to relocate there. And that is something that's just so fascinating to me because it works. Like whether it's like hiring someone, like you want to hire someone to help you with your business, or where are your friends from in the world? Where are your common friendships keep coming from? It's just a cool way to kind of read your stories.
So fascinating. So with remote activation, because I was looking at a couple of pieces of your content about this, I think I saw that we can purchase an item or connect with a person from a specific location if we want to tap into that energy. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Definitely. Yeah. And it's kind of that idea of you exist simultaneously everywhere all at once. So even if you're in one location in the world, your energetic influences are everywhere at simultaneously. So you have stories that are always happening in different parts of the world, and you can tap into them when you choose to consciously.
That's so, so cool. Because we love to talk about past lives here, I would love to know, are there any lines that would indicate past lives in astrocartography? Can we look at that? Is that possible?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The one I consistently see the most for people is the Pluto icy line. The Pluto IC line, I just have had so many clients bring up in their sessions. I feel like I've had a past life here. Can we check this location? And then there's always a Pluto IC line there. The other one that's really big is the Mercury IC line, as well as especially the lunar nodes. The lunar nodes can be places of karmic significance, purpose, importance. And when you have a lunar node on the IC represents the past, tradition, ancestry, past lives. That's the IC. It's like what came before. And so often people feel a deep resonance, either culturally, like Jupiter, for instance, a Jupiter IC line, you might feel real cultural resonance with a place, maybe because you've lived there before in a different time. And so those IC lines are especially important, but I've noticed the ones that are the biggest are Pluto IC and the lunar nodes on the IC.
That's so crazy. And yeah, I have not looked into that with my clients yet, but now knowing that guidance, I will definitely have to take a look, because when we channel the records, we can see past lifetimes, and it would be so interesting to see how that compares with the
Oh, I know. And I first learned about the Akashic records in 2018, right before I moved to France, like right before my trip. And it's wild because I had a reading with someone for the first time, and this person brought up specific past life memories that only I have connected with or seen before in my own work. And it's wild because then when I learned about astrocartography, I pulled up my map and all of those places were right on my IC lines. It's just so cool.
Oh my gosh. Do you think you've had past lifetimes in France?
Oh yeah, I have an IC line. I live right on an IC line here. Yeah.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to someone listening who may want to use this tool to plan travel, or maybe they're considering moving and wanting to know, maybe they feel stuck in their current location where they live, what guidance would you give them, or how do you help support your clients with that process?
I always make sure to relocate their birth chart just to see, what's happening in different areas of their life. Because when you pull up a birth chart, you can see multiple areas, friends, what's this person's community life like here? Their home situation, do they feel comfortable and like this is home for them? This is the fourth house. Same with relationships. Do they have connection, a lot of interactions with people? Are they looking for that spiritual awareness or spiritual, themes, creativity, abundance? We can see all of that in the chart when we look at a relocated chart, more details. And so I would recommend, if someone were looking into this, I would say, one, pull up your astrocartography map for free. You can get my free guide, my free cheat sheet. I'll send you the links. But use the cheat sheet in correspondence with that astro map to read what it means. And then look back at your past. Like, where have you traveled to? Where have the places you've been that you've really loved, that you felt really good there? And know which lines you have in those places, whether it's on a latitude, a parent, those latitude lines I mentioned, or it's a main astrocartography line. And you can also pull up a relocated chart on like a free website like astro.com too, so you can read all that too. But the last thing I would say is place really matters. So if you feel like the place you're in is not supporting you energetically, you're not crazy. You're not crazy. I have had so many clients that come to me because they're like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on. And I pull up their chart, I pull up their map, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's right there. It's like the clock on the wall idea. Like it's indicated, it's reflected, it's signaled in the chart. And once you have this information, you can change your life in so many ways through relocation. And I've lived everywhere. I've experienced all the challenges with money, challenges with job, challenges with dating. And I've experienced the good sides of different parts of my life. And it's really incredible how when you start just looking at your map and putting the pieces together, it's just this kind of lightning in a bottle breakthrough moment of awareness that's just so important, and it can really help people.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more. And living in Philly, I've been here for 10 years now. I've seen a lot of friends come and go. And there's some people who come here and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't handle it. Like the energy here, so many things. So they move on to other places. And then other friends who, like me, have been here for a long time. So I think it's so interesting how places can affect all of us differently. And exactly like what you said, the energy of your lines really plays into that.
Yeah. And I'm also a big believer that if you're called to go where you're meant to go,
Mhm.
like even I'm as just an example, the US as a country is going to be going through some big astrology starting next year. And I've been preparing for this for like 3 years, talking about it online. And now that we're like on the brink of it, I'm like, okay, everyone, I've been talking about relocation for 3 years. If you want to get started, now's the time to start pulling up your map. But there are people that want to move to the US right now and they want to go to really, I think, will be critical places for the US over the next coming years. I'm a big believer that your soul knows where you're meant to go, and there's no right or wrong answer with this. Like, if you in your heart and you have that clarity in your intuition of, I want to go to the US, I want to go to this part of the world, and I know it sounds crazy or whatever place it is in the world, you're going to go where you're meant to go. And I'm a huge believer that's what's for you will not go past you. And as long as you're trusting yourself and like leading from faith and leading from that heart-led intuition, you can't get this wrong. I'm such a big believer in that.
Oh my gosh, me too. 100%. You will know. Like you know where you're meant to be.
Yes.
I think we sometimes overthink it, and yet our intuition is often whispering us or loudly nudging us
Yeah.
where we need to be next. I want to get into a little bit about some of your predictions for 2025. But before I do, just a quick question. How far is the energetic influence with an astrocartography line on the map? Like, how many miles is that
Yeah.
influence?
Yeah. So Jim Lewis, the guy who created it, the guy that invented the maps, used up to 800 miles on either side. So huge orb of influence. A lot. It depends. Every astrologer says something different. Some astrologers swear by 500 miles max. I go by 700 miles max. However, the closer you are, the more intense it is. And so if someone really wants to experience the energetic influence of a line and feel it a lot and have that story be very prominent in their lives, I always say try to get within 250 miles of that line. So that's where you're really going to feel that story. And, once you get to 500 miles, it's going to weaken significantly. I would say if you wanted to fully experience that story 100% and like a lot of it, go within a 250-mile range.
That's really helpful. So even if we're not seeing anything, on the map, there's
Yeah.
still that energetic influence.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like you could be 600 miles away. You're still getting that line because essentially those lines are a reflection of what's happening in the chart. And the chart is still telling a story, the relocation chart. You still have a story that's written there. And then also, even if you don't have any astrocartography lines going directly through an area, you still have those parents, those latitude lines. So you might have a Venus node or a Venus sun going right through where you live, but you might not see it on certain free websites, but know that there are those latitude lines and those can really make or break a place. So definitely lead with those parents, those latitude lines. And then also just, for anyone wondering, you do not have to live on a line itself to experience it. It's one of the biggest misconceptions I see on like TikTok or Instagram is people will think I have to live right on a line. You definitely don't have to. There's a huge orb of influence.
And if you have two lines, like let's say one's more benefic and one's more malefic that are right near each other, do we do we feel like we get a mixed bag of energies? Like
Yeah.
what how would you read
Yeah.
that?
I would say it's not good or bad. It's more how so, like for instance, I live on my Venus line, which is really supportive for home, but I also live on my Saturn line, which is more challenging. And for me, it's played out not in a bad way or a mixed bag way, but rather you're getting the influence of Saturn, which is maturity, responsibility, discipline being a bigger theme in your life, and Venus, which is creativity and self-expression. So it's almost like you're getting two storylines very prominent in your life that are coming up when you live there. And yeah, I wouldn't say it like cancels out or it makes it neutral or anything like that, but rather you're getting two stories and they're both prominent in the life.
So interesting. Let's switch gears a little bit and see. I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you see generally coming down the pipeline 2025? I know there's a lot of big astrology happening. I've got my own sort of predictions that I've channeled through the records. So
Wow.
what are
I'd
your
love to
thoughts
hear.
on that?
Yeah.
We can kind of get into a conversation and talk about all of it.
So astrologic, and I'd love to hear your intuitive guidance too, but astrologically, next year in 25, we're entering what's called the Uranus return of the US. The Uranus return happens once every 84 years. And it happens in the US's birth chart in Gemini in the 7th house. 7th house is the house of open enemies. And this is usually a time of revolution, rebellion, breakthrough, pushing against boundaries, breaking through boundaries. But the thing about the US birth chart is that Mars is also present in that Gemini house. Mars is confrontation, aggression, violence, war. Mars, Uranus together in a house represents war. That is one prediction I'm for sure making for the second half of the 2020s. Does it start in 2025? Probably not. I think it's more going to start, we're going to see more clear indications of an actual entering a war or something with this, whether it's civil war or external conflict in the summer of 2026 specifically. But 2025 is kind of bringing us into a story with that, and then it heightens and intensifies later on. The other thing that's really big with the astrology starting next year, it's what a time to be alive. And we're here, and I'm here. I have chills all down my legs right now as I'm saying this. I'm a huge believer that we as souls came here at this time to witness this historic time, but also to be part of the upliftment, the getting us out of the muck, getting us out of the conflict and creating new change in the world. We're here to be part of that change. And we're all going to find our different ways that we can step up and be shining lights in our communities and our families, all of that. So what a time to be alive, because what's happening is we're getting all these outer planet shifts. Neptune takes 14 years to move through a sign, roughly. Uranus takes 8 years, roughly, 7 to 8 years. Pluto can take 20 years to move through a sign. Saturn takes about 3 years. So we're getting all of these outer planets, slow moving planets that take forever to move and leave. They're all entering new signs at the same time. And this never happens. This is extremely rare. And what I'm predicting is, one, we're going to enter a new world. It's going to feel like a different world. I think technologically, we're entering unimaginable technological advances, and some of them I'm very excited for. I've been seeing in the news like cancer cures and like things like health like breakthroughs in the medical fields, and I predicted that in December last year, and I'm starting to see more of it come out, and I'm like, yes, there are good things that are coming with this new times. But when we look back 20 years from now, we're going to look back at right now in 24 and see how old-fashioned this like time frame that we are in now. It's going to be so different. And this is just the beginning starting in 25. And so I'm expecting also just more. Neptune and Saturn are going to move into Aries. Aries is leadership, accountability, taking ownership of your actions, self-empowerment. It's like that courageous warrior, action-oriented energy. So we're getting this collective shift of people who have been a little bit more in the dream and the ethereal, in the imaginative. We've been in that since 2011, which has been so beautiful and so transcendent and so spiritual for so many people. But there's going to be a collective shift once it moves into Aries next year, which is about action And, it's self-empowerment, it's accountability, it's taking accountability for, your life and its boundaries too. Neptune in Pisces is lack of boundaries. There are no boundaries, with Neptune in Aries, it is putting direct boundaries in place with things. And so I think we're also just going to be seeing a lot more restrictions with things in general in life. And just in the collective for the next, 14 years.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All of that is so fascinating and is helps me frame sort of what I've been shown as well with there being the first thing is for me at the beginning of this year, I was predicting a change in authority here in the United States. And I didn't know what that was going to look like. I didn't know who that was going to be. I'm still not 100% sure yet. And I don't want to say my predictions on this podcast, but as we know, there will be a big change in the authority. And so I feel like that is going to incite an entirely different era in terms of the way that the people show up here in the United States, specifically people and how we relate to our government. I feel like there's going to be a massive change in how people show up in jobs and how the job economy, I feel like is going to be massively different, especially with people being unemployed right now. There's something's got to change. Something's going to shift. I don't know exactly what it is, whether it's more people stepping into small business ownership or there being just a whole new change to the way that people are employed, technically employed, or the way that people make money. There's going to be a totally different shift in the way that money is sourced and how do I want to say this? Like the exchange of currency, the exchange of energy is going to be different. I feel like, especially in the next 5 years, there's going to be a whole change in how that's distributed. So I'm really curious to kind of see how that pans out. And also, too, from a like spiritual perspective, obviously, we live in a world where there are a lot of different religions, people with a lot of different beliefs. I'm very curious to hear, especially with what you said with Neptune changing signs, how that influences the way that people show up in terms of their belief systems. Because I do feel like people are going to start to be aware of what's kind of going on behind the scenes in their local churches, religious people in power. Like, I just feel like there's going to be a lot of exposure in the next couple of years with things really coming to light and this sort of this collective awakening, coming to a conscious awareness of things that are going on out there in terms of religions and people in power in that way. So that's also going to be really interesting to see.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. And Pisces ruled by Jupiter traditionally, which is religion and spirituality and faith. And ever since Saturn started meeting up with Neptune last or early this year, there has just been more, I don't know if you've noticed this, but more skepticism, more restriction around like other people's beliefs. I've noticed a lot of people who were really into astrology for years. They've now switched paths and are like denouncing astrology as demonic. And we're seeing huge religious switches. That is so Saturn Neptune conjunction in Pisces. And I'm really curious to see with Aries, like, is there just this sense of a big split or this sense of like a lack of resonance between both sides and more skepticism for sure with the Saturn conjunct Neptune? But it's just more of this kind of defensive fieriness with Aries. I'm really curious to see what that's going to be about. And I really do. I keep saying that my slogan for this period is going to be either make accountability cool again.
Yes, I love that.
Or it's going to be wake Sleeping Beauty up, because I think we're all going to just like wake up from a dream that we've been a part of since 2011. And we're going to wake up and be like, wait, was that all real? Where have I been? Delusional,
Yeah. And like also waking up to like, and I know a lot of us are already aware of this, but I feel like it's going to be on a bigger scale. Like, is what they're showing us on TV, is that real? You know? Is what's going on out there in the world, like, is that really happening? Is the way that our government works, is that really accurate?
Yeah. I made a prediction last December for 24, what it was going to be about. I said one of the things was red herrings. Like just this sense of, is this World War III? Is this World War III? Like what's like the news coming out and everyone being confused. And I think this year is kind of a year of confusion, but we're all going to wake up next year and just be like, what? Yeah, all of that. It's going to be really interesting. As astrologers, as psychics, as spiritual people, it's just interesting to watch, you know?
Mm. Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to note. Like, we're not having this conversation to spread fear or to worry any
No.
of you about the future. It's just
No.
interesting to observe and to kind of
Yeah.
see it from the perspective of things are changing. You signed up to be here at this
Yes.
time, on this planet at this time. So you're exactly where you need to be to play your role. It's just going to be interesting to see how the setting and the stage sort of unfolds and changes along with us.
Exactly. And use astrology to empower you, you know, to plan your timing of your life, to make big moves, to, you know, when are times to be a bit more quiet for a week, you know, like it's really helpful to kind of map out your year and use astrocartography to go to places that are going to be supportive of your goals in life and what you want to do. Same with the Akashic records, like what incredible tools that we can use during hard times. And I know that for me, I feel whenever the world goes through hard times, naturally, intuitively, I feel the need to step up, to share more, to create more, to uplift people more, and to inspire others to use astrology as a tool to our benefit. You know, like nothing is meant to be feared. We're here to work with it and grow from it. You know, so absolutely, I totally agree with all of that.
Love it so much. So, Helena, we would love to know, how can people find you? And what are some things that you have going on in your business? How can someone listening work with you? What do you have to share?
Yeah, so I teach online courses. I have a relocation astrology course. You can sign up at any time. I have a timing course. My main thing is my certification. So I have been doing readings full time for the last over 2 years. And now I want to teach more and write more and do more speaking and things like that. And so now I have a team of readers. And so through my certification program, you can pass the certification and become a reader and do this, which is so cool. It's amazing to see like my readers like go full time with this work. It's so cool to bring more jobs, more work to the economy. It's just great. So that's my main thing is teaching this now. You can always book a reading or through one of my readers on my directory. And then I have just tons of free content. Like if you ever wanted to follow my astral travels on my vlogs on my YouTube channel or my podcast or my blog, like I have so much free content. You can get all that for free on my website.
Perfection. We'll leave all of her links below in the show notes so you can check them out. And of course, we have to ask you the question today. What does being a mystic mean to you?
Being a mystic reminds me of that feeling of divine harmony. Like I think of like literally just came to me like a flower opening up. And when you surrender and when you trust in your timeline, your timing, you have that faith of something mystical, something magical, something unseen, invisible, and divine. When you trust in that, you feel this deep faith in life. And when you connect with mysticism, there is just more appreciation for the journey of life as it unfolds rather than a fear of the unknown.
So true. So true that trust and surrender is so important. And do you have any final tips for us for living a more mystical life?
Notice the simple joys. Notice the little, tiny, simple, beautiful things in your everyday, whether it's a flower growing up from the concrete or, the birds singing on a tree branch or, wind going through the leaves. Like just start romanticizing the simplest things, like your morning cup of coffee, your favorite perfume, and just start appreciating these little simple things. I really believe that's like one of the secrets to a life of joy.
Is there anything in particular that's bringing you joy right now?
Right now, really enjoying creating my home space, like lighting candles at night, pulling a tarot card in the morning with my morning cup of coffee. I just started a new journal like 3 days ago. So like it's like a fresh new journal with my favorite pen. Those are the things I'm really loving at the moment.
I love that. Thank you so much for everything you shared
Yeah.
with us today. Is there anything we didn't get to that you feel called to share?
No. What are your joys? What are the things you're loving lately?
Oh my gosh. Well, I love the fall. One thing I love
Oh,
about living on the East Coast is how beautiful the fall time of year is here. So I'm looking forward to that change in weather, those crisp, cooler days, and doing my best to get out of the city and connect with nature. It's not easy for me here in the midst of the city life, but it's so important. So looking forward to doing
beautiful.
that. Yep.
Oh, I love that. It was so great to connect with you. So much fun.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it so much.
Thanks, Emily.